Hello learners, I think you are aware about the G20, the event organized in last 2 weeks, almost 1 year in India. So look at whatever the importance, relevance of G20 today, why, what is the outcomes, success and failureness of our diplomacy, its metaphor, G20 discussions, the Bharat Mandapam. The first time it is the India gets the presidency to invite G20 leaders at New Delhi in 2023. Almost all cities, it is the new kinds of the diplomacy. So that's why many times Indian diplomats, foreign minister, prime ministers, quote unquote, say it is not the G20s, it is the elite democracy, it is the people's 20 events in India. So we can say why G20 is important today. If you look at after the end of the Cold War in international politics, a lot of changes, the end of the ideological wars, one superpower, that is the Soviet Union's already break off, the world is leading through the new world order, that is the Americans' design of the world order. Then worlds also move towards multipolar worlds, unipolar to the multipolar worlds. So new era of reforms, liberalizations, globalizations and others impacts. That's why the emerging economy, the forms G20, it is the groups that decided how to attract the markets, investment, economic connectivity to each other, how to cooperate each other in the different spheres of life, different sphere of the country's life, except defense. So let's see what is the importance, what was the successful achievements, then outcomes of the G20 in India. Look at this picture. It symbolizes India's historical culture, civilizations. It is the place where Bharat Mandapam was located. It is the Pragati Madan that located in Delhi. So these symbols reflected the ideas, the values of India. That's why G20 devoted to, committed to the one earth, one family, one future. It is the pictures reflect itself, the achievements, what grand events was there in the Delhi for the last week for the 3 days here. Most of the leaders of world powers and including IMF, World Bank, many international organizations, presidents, including European Unions, also arrived to attend this meeting. This is the reflections of the G20 events in India, where most of the delegates, prime minister and presidents sit together and discuss the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, what is the relevance, what is the achievements, whatever the cultural value of India, how to reflect in the Indian world society from India to the world. So this is the message from here. So that's why I say after the post-Cold War, it was the new achievements of the emerging economy to clubbing each other for cooperations. It is the India's 2023 presidency that's whole objectives is surrounding through the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. One earth, one family, one future. The whole diplomacy of G20, the events organized in the last 1 year in the different cities, different places, different institutions, to collecting ideas, exchange of ideas with the foreign delegates in India. The meaning, the sense of the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. If you look at the historical introduction of G20, why G20 is there, what is the relevance and its importance today in the era of globalizations, or we can say the new world order after the post-pandemic, the COVID-19, why G20 is there and what is the relevance in the multipolar world. You know, there is an ongoing war in Ukraine. There is a Russia and Ukraine war crisis is there. Conflict is there. War conflict is there. Despite the facts, India achieved its goal. So we can say, if you look at the roots of the G20, it is the club of countries that meets to discuss global economic and the political issues. If you look at the whole geographical conditions of the G20 countries, it is the 85% of the world economic output and the 75% of the world trade belongs to the G20 countries. They contains 1/3 of the global population also. G20 groupings, we can say collateral international forum to deal with the global financial crisis, especially post 1999. The forum for encounter the responsibility of confronting significant large scale crisis and emerged after the end of the 1 decade after the end of the Cold War. It is the diplomatic platforms. We can say that in this event is unique and very successful in the Indian perspective. It is the India is the emerging power in the international relations today, in the global politics today. So we can say it is the grand diplomatic arrival on the world stage and oasis of ideas. G20 was the first to kind summit in India's diplomatic history, bringing India to the center of the focus when the crisis every sport over the world affairs. India scored apparent diplomatic success, convening a series of meetings over diverse themes at the pan-Indian scale. We know G20 was outcomes of the, we can say, the financial crisis. There was a number of emerging economy in the post-90s, and also growing recognition some of these countries were not adequately represented in the global economic discussion and the governance. That's why India claimed it is the voice of global South in international politics. We can say G20 operates without a permanent secretariat and staff, but there is a relevance in the world politics, economic affairs. The chair rotates annually among the members selected the different regional groupings countries. It is rotating. Earlier it was the Indonesia, India, and the next president moved to the Brazil. So chair is part of the revolving 3 members management group of the past, present, and the future. Chairs referred as the Troika. Next G20 will be held in Brazil. So if you look at the whole preparations of the government of India, Sherpa finance tracks, many more things there. They focus on the non-economic and financial issues, also development, anti-corruption, food security, addressing internal aspects, procedural rules of the G20 process. Sherpas carry important planning, recognitions, implementations tasks continuously. So there is a lot, various level of discussions, dialogues with the delegates of G20s. What will be the solution for present challenges and the future challenges, especially the non-military challenges in the G20 groupings. So whatever the idea today of the G20 is the most important today for the discussions why financial and economic and trade cooperation is important today, because we know the post-90s India and other countries, especially China, Brazil, South Africa, they are the emerging economy. India especially largest democracy in the world. So the first time reflected its values, ideas, diplomacy, and also expose whatever the objectives of this country, not the today, the Vedic times, that is called Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The real essence of or real sense of the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakams belong to this event, that objectives, no attachment, no detachment, no discriminations on the policy levels, especially we say in the part of democracy. If you look at the second part of the G20, whatever the structures, the institutions, the participatory by non-members, yes, the presidency also invite some of the prominent head of the institutions like IMF, World Bank, UN, OECD, WTO, Financial Stability Board, many more there, ASEAN's, African Unions. These times, India invited the head of African Unions and also of additional G20 plus 1, G21, the inclusion of African Union as a part of G20 as also part of the voice of a stronger voice of the global south. If you look at Bharat Mandapam, what is the sense, what is the context, why it is important, why it is the Bharat Mandapam? Yes, it is the essence of this land, the beauty of our culture, diversity, our democracy, freedoms, liberty, equality, and the justice, whatever the notion of the democracy, that's showing the essence for the Bharat Mandapams. The New Delhi summit, the group of 20, may be remembered by the historians by the variety of the regions. The summit was preceded by the 200 events held in the different part of India, turning into Indian presidency into the people's presidency. This is another symbols of Indian culture that reflected the core values of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam in Indian politics, diplomacy, inviting the foreign delegates to discuss the essence and showing the ancient culture, expose the Indian ancient culture to them. In the background, it is the figure of the picture of Nalanda University. The ancient times, it was known for the ancient university. The place for learnings in the medieval India. So this picture showing the most of the leaders with the Indian president and the prime ministers. The photo shoot is there. So that exposing India's powerhouse that time, the knowledge of power, the Nalanda University. Yeah, it is the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, MBS, most of the leaders or all the head of the G20 countries, they visited there. Prime Minister welcomed them. But during this visit, some of the leaders, especially the president of the Russia and Chinese premier, decided not to attend these G20 events. They absent from the summit. One reflection is there about the Ukraine crisis. Ukraine cast on the dark shadow on the negotiations for the consensus on the outcomes of the documents. But finally, Russian foreign ministers attended this G20 summit along with Prime Minister of the PRC, People Republic of China, who was the part of the delegates here in the absence of the Chinese President Xi Jinping, all have the consensus about the New Delhi declarations. The masses matter for the global politics, the masses importance for our democracy, the masses importance for the voice of the global south. So we can say this grouping meant for the first ever expansions admit the African Union as the member, finally proving all the pessimists wrong. Sherpa's leaders led by the India managed to pull off diplomatic coup, drawing global admirations for substantial New Delhi declarations. It was backed by the 100% consensus. Yes, there is some apprehension in the mind after the Bali declarations the last year, because there is quote unquote mention about the Ukraine crisis, the war between the Russia and the ongoing war between the Russia and Ukraine. But here, India not invited Ukrainian president to attend or through the hybrid mode to address these G20 meetings. A lot of concerns from the European Unions, there is some pressures from the United States and Russia. Despite the facts, India was not ready to any political use of this platform for the political advantage or disadvantage against our favor for the Ukraine as well as the Russia. So that's why they minimized, it is the diplomatic success for the Indian diplomats to maximize, and they managed all parties, almost all countries, the 100% consensus about the New Delhi declarations. So that's why first diplomatic success is the inclusion of African Union as a part of the G20. It is right now the G21. African Union, that is the club of 55 countries of Africa. It is the global south, India also. So maintain the brotherhood with the African Unions, whatever the geopolitical or geoeconomics strategy behind this move, we can say it is the achievements for India to countering many geopolitical implications in the land of Africa as well as the South Asia, Indo-Pacific, and many more things, ASEAN. So that's why it is important, the induction of African Union as a part of the global south in the G20. That's why the Indian diplomats manage it as the 100% consensus. 100% consensus about the declaration of G20. We know African Union has become the member that represent from across the continent at the future G20 meetings. If you look at the whole history, diplomatic discussions, dialogues, right from the beginning of its presidency, India chose to insulate the G20 from the pressures generated by the war in Ukraine. G7s and other things. If you look at what is the major political and diplomatic success at the India's presidency at the G20 2023. Yes, there is some success, diplomatic success. The 18th G20 summit produced the New Delhi declarations, leaders' declarations in days building up to the summit. There was an anxiety about the chances of its success, but in the Prime Minister say, at the complete consensus reached to the declaration's contents, together inclusion of African Union in the G20 as a member, consensus the celebrations, fraternity of the South, global South with the Africa. Another achievement is there. If we look at the partnership of global infrastructure and investment, India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. It is the new geopolitical pipeline, or we can say the new geopolitical economic setting for emerging economy, connecting corridors from the India to the Europe. Some analysts say it is against the Chinese initiative of Belt Road initiatives to counter. Yes, it is sure the new agendas, new approach for the energy security as well as the connectivity. Somebody may ask, what is the India, Middle East? Middle East means the West Europe in the view of India, West Asia, not Europe, and the Europe, the whole Europe economic corridor. The main participants of these new proposals of corridor, it is the India, Saudi Arabia, European Union, United Arab Emirates, UAE, France, Germany, Italy, and the United States. The leading player of this economic corridor is the India, Saudi Arabia, and the European Union and the US, as well as the Germany. This is the new major developments during the outcomes of G20 meetings in India. We say the major development was the announcement of Partnership Global Infrastructure Investment, which is future projections of new corridors, new geopolitics of corridor, and also economic integrations between the India and the Europe. These developments will have long-term impacts of geoeconomic and geopolitical nature. There was also one of the signing of Memorandum of Understanding on the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, IMEC, of the major participants, especially US, European Union, France, Germany, Italy, India, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE during this presidency, which has various implications for regional and global geopolitics in the present global orders and the future next 20 and 30 years. But its success depends upon not only India, the next diplomatic move of Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Then United States interference in the West Asia as well as the South Asia. Let's hope for the West. We say it is underlines for the US is willing to engage in Arab world. Europe is assisting considerable attention to the regions. India is ready to dependable partner for the energy security. IMEC is perceived as the counter for the China Belt Road initiative in the regions. So maybe it is the satellite of the Western isolation of Iran and indicates towards the warring tie between the Saudi Arabia and Israel. These corridors includes railway line that will provide a reliable, cost-effective cross-border ship-to-rail transit for goods and services between India, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, Europe, while Arabia, Jordan, Israel, supplementing the existing maritimes and road transportations. There is a three connectivity is there: corridor, economic corridor, road infrastructures, road transport, plus maritime security. Railway link will also have electricity cables, high-speed data cables, and the hydrogen pipeline for digital connectivity and the green energy export respectively. We say whatever the West Asian Middle East energy security, Ukraine crisis lead to disruption of energy flow up to the Europe. As per international energy agencies, European unions might to face potential shortfall. That's why India and as well as the European unions is not looking for depend on the whole Russia. So this is the another pictures reflected the whatever the success for these corridors. Another is the global biofuels alliance is there, about grouping for countries including US, India, Brazil for global partnerships. Global biofuels, Bangladesh Prime Minister is also here, Brazil's India. In the conclusions, I can say, yes, on the diplomatic levels, it is the achievements for India. Some diplomatic achievements, the successful conducting this G20 presidency, whatever the objectives, the whole motto of linking with the Indian civilizations, the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. A major trend at the G20 summit previous month, we say emergence of the global south as a significant factor in international politics. If you look at the new orientations embodied by in orientation witnessed within the G20 forums, disregarded the questions of marginalized and the deprived. This proves how globalized foreign policy are essential nationalist as the core. A growing number of countries are walking into the side trap, increasing the risk of several countries proving into the aggressive narrations globally to cover their failures domestically. So that's why I say, whatever the changes in the context of the geopolitics and the geoeconomics, some of the achievements is at the present G20 meetings that showing for the achievement of voices of global south international relations, inclusion of African Union as a part of G20, that's the one of the major achievements, and the 100% consensus on the declarations, New Delhi declarations, that's matter for India's diplomacy and the India's position in the global politics. Thank you.